They called me charity case at the family dinner table. His mother threw my worn shoes in the trash. His sister said I'd never be good enough. 3 years later, I walked into their bankruptcy hearing as their new landlord. Sometimes karma wears designer heels and owns half the city. If you've ever been underestimated because of where you came from, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button because by the end of this video, you'll understand why your current situation is not your final destination. Let's dive in. Let me take you back to when I was 22, working 3 jobs just to keep my head above water. I was waitressing at this greasy diner on 5th Street, cleaning office buildings at night, and picking up weekend shifts at a department store. My hands were always rough, my feet always hurt, and my bank account was always empty. But I was in love, and love made everything seem possible. His name was Damon, and he was everything I thought I wanted. Tall, charming, with this easy smile that made me forget how tired I was. We'd been together for 2 years, and I genuinely believed we were building something real. He knew about my situation, knew I was struggling, but he never made me feel small about it. At least not until his family got involved. You see, Damon came from money. Real money. The kind where you don't look at price tags. And your biggest worry is which country club to join. I should have seen the warning signs when he kept making excuses about why I hadn't met his family yet. They're traveling, he'd say. Or, it's not a good time. But love makes you ignore red flags, doesn't it? I was living in this tiny studio apartment where the refrigerator hummed too loud and the shower barely worked. At night, after my shifts, I'd sit on my second-hand couch with my laptop, teaching myself how to code. I'd found some free courses online, and something about programming just clicked with me. It was like solving puzzles, and every small breakthrough felt like a victory. But I kept this passion to myself because when you're barely surviving, dreams feel like luxuries you can't afford. Then came the Sunday that changed everything. Damon finally invited me to meet his family. I remember spending my last $40 on a dress from a discount store and borrowing shoes from my neighbor because mine had holes in them. The borrowed shoes were too tight, but I figured I could handle a few hours of discomfort. I had no idea what I was walking into. Their house wasn't just big, it was intimidating. One of those colonial mansions with perfectly manicured lawns and a circular driveway. I felt like I was visiting a museum, not someone's home. When Damon's mother, Helen, opened the door, her smile was polite, but cold. Her eyes immediately swept over me, taking inventory of everything I was wearing, everything I wasn't. "So, you're the girl Damon's been hiding," she said. And something about the way she said hiding made my stomach drop. The only person who showed me genuine warmth was Damon's grandmother, Miss Betty. She was this tiny woman with kind eyes who squeezed my hand and said, "Don't mind them, honey. They've forgotten what it's like to work for anything." I should have paid more attention to that warning. That first dinner was like walking through a minefield. Every conversation topic was designed to highlight how different I was. They talked about their recent trip to Europe. While I sat quietly, trying not to think about how their wine probably cost more than my monthly rent. Nicole, Damon's sister, kept making these little comments that sounded innocent but cut deep. "Oh, you work at Murphy's Diner? I drive past there sometimes. It looks so authentic," she'd say with this fake smile. When Helen asked about my family and I explained that my mom was raising 3 kids on her own while working as a nurse's aide, the silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't sympathy, it was judgment. I could feel them wondering what their son was doing with someone like me. The worst part was watching Damon. He didn't defend me, didn't jump into the conversations to include me. He just sat there laughing at his brother Kyle's jokes about the working class and nodding along when his father talked about the importance of breeding and background. I felt invisible at a table where I was supposed to be the guest of honor. Over the next few months, the family gatherings became exercises in endurance. Each time, they found new ways to remind me I didn't belong. Helen would make comments about my clothes, always disguised as concern. "Oh, honey, you must be so uncomfortable in those old things. Don't you want to freshen up your wardrobe?" The shoe incident happened at Damon's birthday party. I'd saved up for weeks to buy a decent pair of black flats. Nothing fancy, but they were new and made me feel more confident. During the party, I slipped them off while sitting on their pristine white couch. When I went to put them back on, they were gone. Helen found them in the trash can outside. "Oh my goodness, I thought they were old shoes someone had thrown away," she said with mock horror. "They looked so worn, I assumed they were garbage." Those shoes had cost me 2 days' worth of tips, and she knew it. But what hurt more was watching Damon's face when I told him what happened. There was this flash of embarrassment, not for his mother's cruelty, but for my poverty. The charity comments started after that. Nicole would joke about adopting me, making loud announcements about donating clothes I might like. "We should set up a little fund for her," she'd say to her mother, just loud enough for me to hear. "It's so sad, really." But the breaking point came when they uninvited me from Damon's birthday party. Helen called me directly, her voice syrupy sweet, but her words like acid. "Sweetheart, I think it would be better if you didn't come this weekend. It's going to be quite upscale, and I just don't want you to feel uncomfortable." When I told Damon, expecting him to be outraged, he just shrugged. "Maybe it's for the best. My dad's business partners will be there, and you know how stuffy those people can be." That's when I knew he was embarrassed by me, too. The final humiliation came 3 weeks later. Helen asked me to meet her for coffee. Just the two of us. I should have known better, but part of me hoped she wanted to make peace. Instead, she slid an envelope across the table. "There's $10,000 in there," she said, her voice matter of fact. "More money than you've probably ever seen at once." I stared at the envelope, my heart pounding. "What's this for? For you to walk away from Damon? From our family? From this fantasy you're living?" Her words were surgical, precise, designed to cut deep. "You're dragging him down, honey. He has a future, real potential. You're just survival." I've never felt anger like I felt in that moment. Not just at her words, but at how small they made me feel. How small I'd been letting myself feel for months. "Damon loves me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Helen laughed. Actually laughed. "Damon loves the idea of rebellion. You're his charity project, his way of feeling noble. But when it comes time to build a real life with real responsibilities, you think he's going to choose someone who can't even afford decent shoes." I pushed the envelope back across the table and stood up. "I don't want your money." "Then you're more foolish than I thought," she said. "Because you're going to lose him anyway, and you'll have nothing to show for it." She was right about one thing. That night, Damon came to my apartment and I could see it in his face before he even spoke. The conversation was short, painful, and familiar. He used words like different paths and timing. But what he really meant was that I wasn't enough. I wasn't worth fighting for. After he left, I sat in my tiny apartment and cried until I had no tears left. Then I did something that surprised even me. I opened my laptop and started coding. Not because I had to, but because it was the only thing that made sense anymore. Every line of code was a promise to myself that I would never feel that small again. The app idea came to me during one of my night shifts cleaning offices. I was watching the security guard, thinking about how people like us were invisible to the world, working jobs that kept society running but were never valued. What if there was a platform that connected gig workers with better opportunities? What if we could rate employers the way they rate us? What if we could build something that actually served people like me? I spent the next 6 months living off ramen and determination. Every free moment went into building this app. I taught myself advanced programming languages, studied user interface design, and researched market gaps. My studio apartment became my headquarters. My kitchen table became my office, and my dreams became my fuel. The app was called Workbridge, and it was designed to empower gig workers. Users could find higher-paying jobs, rate employers for fairness, and access resources for skill development. It was everything I wished I'd had during those brutal months of working 3 jobs. I launched it with 0 budget and a prayer. The first week, I had 50 users. The second week, 200. By the end of the first month, over 1,000 people were using Workbridge daily. The feedback was incredible. People were finding better jobs, earning more money, and finally having a voice in an economy that usually silenced them. That's when the investors started calling. Apparently, someone at a major venture capital firm had been watching my user growth and they wanted to meet. I'll never forget walking into that glass conference room in my best thrift store outfit, sitting across from men in thousand suits, and pitching my idea with everything I had. They offered me $2 million for 30% of my company. I countered with $5 million for 20%. They said yes. But I wasn't done. I used that money to build 3 more apps, each one solving problems I'd experienced firsthand. An app for single mothers to find affordable childcare, a platform for students to access free tutoring, a service that connected elderly people with companions. Each app succeeded because it came from a real place, a real need. By the time I was 25, I'd sold my first company for $50 million. But instead of stopping there, I reinvested everything. I started buying real estate in undervalued neighborhoods, creating affordable housing that was actually decent. I launched a tech incubator for entrepreneurs from low-income backgrounds. I built an empire, but more importantly, I built something that mattered. 3 years after that humiliating conversation with Helen, I was living in a penthouse overlooking the city, driving cars that cost more than most people's houses, and running a company valued at over $10 billion. But I still remembered exactly how it felt to be dismissed, to be called a charity case, to be told I wasn't enough. That's why when I heard that Damon's family business was failing, I felt a mix of emotions I wasn't expecting. Their real estate development company had made some bad investments and was facing bankruptcy. They needed a bailout and according to my business manager, they were desperately seeking investors. The irony was delicious, but it was also an opportunity, not for revenge exactly, but for closure. I decided to take the meeting without revealing my identity up front. I wanted to see their faces when they realized who their potential savior was. My assistant scheduled it as a standard investment consultation with B. Johnson Enterprises using my middle name and keeping things deliberately vague. Walking into that boardroom was like stepping back in time, except this time I was the one with the power. Helen, Robert, Nicole, and Kyle were all there looking stressed and defeated in a way I'd never seen before. Damon was there too, older now, with worry lines around his eyes. When I walked through those doors, the silence was absolute. Helen's face went white. Nicole's mouth actually fell open. Robert started to say something, then stopped. Only Damon managed to speak. What? What are you doing here? I'm here about your bailout, I said, setting my briefcase on their conference table and taking a seat at the head of it. I understand you need $10 million to avoid bankruptcy. The next few minutes were a masterclass in poetic justice. Helen, who had once told me I was just survival, was now begging for my help to survive. Nicole, who had joked about making me their charity case, was now hoping I'd be charitable enough to save their family business. But you know what? I didn't gloat. I didn't throw their past cruelty in their faces. I simply laid out my terms, professional and fair. I would provide the bailout, but with conditions. The company would be restructured, their discriminatory practices would end, and a portion of their profits would go toward programs for low-income entrepreneurs. Why would you help us? Helen asked, her voice small. After everything, because holding on to anger would make me just like you used to be, I said. And I've worked too hard to become someone better than that. I did invest in their company and it worked out well for everyone. They kept their business, learned some valuable lessons about treating people with dignity, and I added another successful venture to my portfolio. Damon tried to reach out afterward, talking about second chances and how he'd always believed in me, but that ship had sailed long ago. The only family member I stayed in touch with was Miss Betty, Damon's grandmother. She called me a few weeks after the meeting, laughing about how proud she was. I always knew you had fire in you, honey. I'm just glad you learned to use it to build instead of burn. Today, my companies employ over 50,000 people, and we've helped hundreds of thousands more through our platforms and programs. I still remember what it feels like to count every dollar, to wear shoes with holes, to be dismissed because of where I came from. That memory keeps me grounded and drives everything I do. I learned that when people try to make you feel small, they're usually speaking from their own insecurities and limitations. Helen's cruelty came from fear that her son might choose love over status. Nicole's mockery came from a need to feel superior, to mask her own emptiness. Their rejection wasn't really about me at all. Your current chapter is not your final story. Every no is redirecting you to your yes. If this story inspired you to keep pushing despite what others say, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about turning pain into power. Drop a comment and tell me about a time someone underestimated you. I read every single one. Remember, they don't have to believe in you for your dreams to come true.